Okay, so we're going to go back to our employee tab. The next section that we'll cover is going to be notes. This is just a place for you to put any notes that you may have had a discussion with an employee. It may have been a positive discussion. It may have been one about them coming in late. But it's simply just a little note section that you can always document certain things about the employee. And HR and payroll will also have privy to this information as well. But it is just a quick note-taking session so you know where you're at with your employee at all times. Which brings us to the time card. This is where you're going to spend a majority of your time. So within the time card, I'm going to go ahead and toggle over to the next employee. So you can kind of see a little bit about what the employee punches look like. You can see in red that they have a couple missed punches for this employee. You can also see that we have an actual time and a rounded time. One thing to note, one thing that your department heads have decided, so if an employee punches in it's the typical rounding rule, so it's going to round to the nearest 15 minute, unless it's before or after the stop time, which means that if I'm scheduled for 8 o'clock and I punch in at 7:30, it's going to round me to 8 o'clock unless my manager overrides that. And that's just because you're scheduled for 8 o'clock, they should be coming in at 8 o'clock. Now, if you ask them to come in at 7:30, then you can override that punch time and pay them for that additional 30 minutes. But this is just to cut back on those employees who maybe, at 7:48, they realize the rounding rules, so they're clocking in at 7:44 and wanting to round to 7:45 to get that extra 15 minutes. It's still going to bump them to their schedule at 8 o'clock. And it's going to do the same at the end of the day. This makes the system be the bad guy for a little bit until you decide if you need to override that schedule and give them that additional 30 minutes or that additional hour. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do now. So you can see that on Monday they punched in at 7:35 a.m. and it rounded the time to 8 o'clock a.m. They're missing the out punch for that day. There's two ways that you can go ahead and take care of that missing punch. You can type directly into the grid. So I'm going to go ahead and clock them out at 4:30 p.m. And once I make that change to a grid, any change made within a grid, you must post that change in order for the hours to calculate. So once I post that hour, now I can see that there's 8 hours calculated for that particular day. And that's because it did round this time, so it's taking the calculation of this rounded time here. So if I had asked them to come in a little bit earlier on that day, I could double click on that punch line and I can go ahead and check the box that says override rounding, and I can put that start time of 7:35 directly into the box. Once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and click on that save button. That's the same throughout the system. And I'm going to close the window. And now you're going to see that they're actually paid for 8.5 hours. Okay. One thing to know too, per payroll, it will round your daily total as well as your weekly total to the nearest quarter hour or quarter amount. Okay. There will be an audit as well. You're going to have to put in an audit reason as well as a comment. So anytime you make a change to the time card, down here at the bottom, you're going to see a comment section. And within that comment section, it does save your comments. I'm logged in as a different supervisor right now, but for example, what I wrote is ask the employee to come in early. And now when I save that change, it's going to ask me if I want to save those comments to my own lookup table. And once I click yes, the next time I go in my drop-down menu, it's going to have those comments there. You're not saving them for everybody, you're just saving them for yourself, but do know that when HR or payroll runs reports, they can see all the comments. And those will be audited probably on a bi-weekly basis, just to make sure that every time you edit a punch, you're putting in the comment section why you edit that punch. So I know it's kind of hard to see from probably back there, but you do have different colors within your time card. Anything that's generated in the black color is going to be anything that's system generated. That means it's coming from a time clock or it's coming from web entry. It hasn't been touched by a supervisor, it hasn't been edited. You can see that the ones in green have been edited by a supervisor. Maybe the program was changed, or maybe the employee forgot to clock in and you clocked them in for the employee. But it's going to show the different color in what happens with the edit. Also, in our reporting, every edit that's done is going to be auditable. So it's going to show your edit, it's going to show your comment, it's going to show what time you edited and who edited that punch. So if you were to, say, be on vacation and you delegated to somebody else, you would contact HR or payroll to make that delegation, and then they would have access to control your employees or approve your employees while you're on vacation. You can also see that anytime it says pay record or PREC, it's going to be a total number of hours, which means that the question was about the vacation or putting in personal time for an employee. That's going to be a total lump sum rather than an actual time stamp or time punch. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle back to one of our previous employees so that way I can go ahead and add a pay record. And this is how you would add that vacation time. So up here at the top you have your toolbar. Each of these function buttons will actually create a different function for you. So the plus punch is you're going to add a punch for an employee. So if you needed to add a punch, you could either click on that button or you could double click on the missing punch. Or if the punch wasn't there at all, you could go ahead and just hit the add punch. Either way, it's going to bring you up to this time card edit window. You can select the punch type. The 4 that you'll be using, which are all in your guide as well, the IND is your in for day, the INL is your in from lunch, the out D is your out for the day, and your out L is out from lunch. If you're already doing the lunch punches for the 30-minute standard, you don't have to put in a lunch. However, if they do clock in or out for lunch, it is going to override the actual if it's over 30 minutes. If it's under 30 minutes, it's still going to dock them for the 30 minutes of pay. You would simply click on that particular punch type, IND for in for day, and you would put in the punch time and select the punch date. Everything else is already automatically generated for you according to their home departments or home programs. And you would click on the Save button. To add a pay record, which is kind of what we were talking about for your personal time, you would click on Add Pay Record. You would select the date, and we'll say that on 3/29, they're going to have 8 hours of personal time. Select the pay type. There we go, 2 for personal. And I would click Save. I would put in my comment, personal time added. Oops. Click Save. It's going to ask me if I want to save those comments in the lookup table. I say yes. I close out the window. And now that personal time has been added. I see that they still have a missing punch for this week though, and they told me that they forgot to clock out. So I'm going to go ahead and clock them out at 4:30 for that day. I'm going to go ahead and hit post, but I also need to go ahead and add my comments as to why I changed that. So I'm going to go into the time card edit, and I'm going to say, Miss Punch. As you can see, if I hit this down arrow right here, it's going to show me the other 2 that I've already added, but since I haven't used this before, I'm going to go ahead and Miss Punch. I'm going to save. It's going to say, do you want to save the comments? I say yes. Now I can go ahead and close out this particular window, and that time has been updated. One thing I do want to mention that within this grid, you can actually change the look of it. So if you want to see what your comments are for that grid, and you want to add that, up in the top left-hand corner, anytime you see anything that looks like an Excel spreadsheet, you click on that top left-hand corner, which is the configuration for that view, and you can add a field. So say I want to say my comments on all my changes, I click Save, and now I can see every time I put in a comment for a change that I've done. So if you also want to see the program, say an employee transfers from one program to another and you need to charge that program differently for that day, you can also go ahead and add that particular field. So let's say program and save. Now I can see here on this particular grid. So if I wanted to change the program, I could go ahead and double click on that day, say he works in a different program for that day. There we go. I can then go ahead and come over here to program and select a different program and charge that program for that time for that day. I don't know if many of you have people that change a lot. If you don't, you'll probably never need to use that. But if you need to charge a different program for somebody's time, of course it's going to show up on their time. They're going to know that somebody's charging that program, but that's how you would take care of that as well. Your edit is going to bring up that same time card edit window. So it's the same functionality. If I want to disable a auto lunch deduct, say I asked an employee to work through their lunch, you can see here in the daily column that every day they've been deducted 30 minutes for their lunch column, or I'm sorry, for their lunchtime. I then can go ahead and double click on that in-for-day lunch punch, and let's just use this Wednesday as an example. And all I have to do is click on disable auto lunch deduct, click yes, and save. I need to put my comment in. Remove lunch deduct and save. Yes, I'm going to save it. So now you can see that the time has increased to 8.5, and when I click on this daily tab now, you can see that that particular day does not have a lunch deduct. Okay? Your payroll function key is going to show you the total number of hours for that week. So if an employee had gone into overtime, it's going to show you at what point in the week that goes to overtime, and it's going to show that pay factor change to a 1.5. So the other function key that's here at the top is your delete key. So if you accidentally make a mistake, which I know none of us ever do, we can go ahead and click on the line that you would like to delete, and you would go ahead and just click that delete and say, it always asks you if you're sure. You say yes, line is gone. So even though it's gone, it does show in the audit trail. So it always is auditable by either management or by your HR and payroll professionals. You'll notice another key here at the top, your exceptions key. So what exceptions are, it's more of a management tool. So it's going to show you your employees that are clocking in very late. They've already been set up rules in the back end, so if they're later than their scheduled start time, it's going to show them tardy. If they're 30 minutes later, it's going to show them late. But these are all tools that you can use, especially during review time, that you can say, you know, you've left early at least 25 times this year, or you've come in late at least 30 times this year. These are all just tools for you to use and reports for you to use, so that way you can show the employee exceptions throughout the year. And I'm also going to show you how you can show that in a really colorful, fun calendar as well.